I want to begin with a recording that you made in which you and Melania Trump are talking about her legacy. And it's really fascinating to hear her kind of just speak in this way. Let's listen.
Sure. That's fine. Who supports Melania? You do have a legacy.
Yeah, but then, well, it doesn't come directly from what I put on Twitter came from me. They know about the children, and they talked about it.
But I'm just saying, you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying, right? I mean, you do know what I'm saying. You shouldn't have people across the world. It's in New York. It was always Melania. Like,
I don't give a.
It's not about giving a.
It's true. Honestly, it's like, because it's honestly, I'm doing the same stuff that I did before.
Okay, so let me just ask you this. When was the last time a first lady got caught on tape saying she doesn't give about Christmas decorations? And then, like, those same tapes basically blow up her husband's entire public image? Yeah, that happened. And honestly, the fallout from this is absolutely insane. So here's what's going down. Secret recordings of Melania Trump just leaked, and they're not pretty. We're talking about private conversations where she's venting, complaining, and basically tearing apart the whole first lady role. And the person who leaked them? Her former best friend. Yeah, that's right. Someone she trusted, someone who worked right there in the White House with her, recorded their private conversations, and then boom, released them to the media. Can you believe this? Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, so what? Politicians get leaked all the time. But this isn't just some policy disagreement or boring political drama. This is Melania Trump saying things that completely contradict the image she's tried to maintain for years. And the timing, oh man, the timing couldn't be worse for Donald Trump, because while he's trying to push his agenda, deal with critics, and maintain control, his own wife is on tape basically saying she's fed up with everything. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the...
Anderson, I just want to first start by saying that, when I first started taping Melania, I had already left the White House and had already been accused of a criminal crime. And I
mean, they threw you under the bus, basically.
Very, very much so. The Trump administration, as well as the Presidential Inauguration Committee, tandemly created a narrative that I wouldn't follow, and I needed to be the scapegoat. With that being said, I truly, genuinely went into planning the inauguration with honor. It is the United States of America, and helping the First Lady set up her East Wing office. Unfortunately, there were too many roadblocks in the way. So for Melania to create a legacy...
And look, the media went absolutely wild with this. CNN played the tapes on Anderson Cooper's show. The recording spread everywhere. Twitter exploded. Conservative commentators tried to defend her. Liberal commentators used it as ammunition. And Trump himself? Well, according to sources close to the situation, he completely collapsed emotionally when this went public. Like, we're talking about a guy who's faced scandal after scandal, controversy after controversy, and this is what gets to him? His wife's private frustrations becoming public knowledge? Here's the thing that makes this whole situation even crazier. The woman who leaked these recordings, Stephanie Winston Wolkoff, she wasn't just some random staffer. She was Melania's senior advisor, her friend, someone who helped plan the inauguration. They had history together. And then something happened. A falling out. A betrayal. Who knows exactly what. And Wolkoff decides to write a whole book called Melania and Me and release these secret recordings along with it. That's cold. That's calculated. And honestly, that's devastating for the Trumps. Now let's talk about what's actually on these tapes. Because it's not just Melania complaining about her schedule or saying she's tired. No. She's on there saying things like, they say I'm complicit. I'm the same like him. I support him. I don't say enough. I don't do enough where I am. So she knows people criticize her for standing by Trump's policies. She knows people think she's complicit in controversial decisions. And instead of defending herself publicly, she's privately admitting that, yeah, she gets it. She understands why people are mad. But here's where it gets really spicy. There's this part on the tape where Melania is absolutely ranting about Christmas decorations. And I'm not making this up. She literally says, I'm working my, well, let's just say she uses some colorful language on the Christmas stuff that, who gives about the Christmas stuff and decorations. But I need to do it, right? Are you kidding me? The First Lady of the United States caught on tape cursing about having to decorate the White House for Christmas. And I get it. I'm sure it's exhausting. I'm sure there's pressure. But come on, that's literally one of the most beloved traditional parts of being First Lady. Kids look forward to seeing those decorations. Families visit during the holidays. And she's on tape acting like it's this huge burden that she can't stand dealing with. And then, oh man, and then there's the part about immigrant children. So during the whole family separation policy controversy, when the administration was literally separating kids from their parents at the border and people were outraged, Melania was apparently frustrated that SEE was getting criticized for it. On the tapes, she talks about how unfair it is that people expect her to speak out, that they're blaming her for policies she didn't create. But here's the kicker. She doesn't really express much sympathy for the actual children who were separated from their families. It's more about how she's being treated unfairly by the media. So now you've got this perfect storm. You've got a First Lady who sounds completely done with her role. You got her former best friend betraying her trust in the most public way possible. You've got recordings that make Melania look out of touch, frustrated, and honestly kind of cold. And you've got Donald Trump, who's reportedly devastated that his wife's private feelings are now national news. This is wild. This is the kind of scandal that doesn't just fade away. And we need to break down exactly what happened, why it matters, and what this means for the Trumps going forward. All right, so let's really dig into this, because there's oh so much more going on here than just some leaked audio. Like when you start connecting the dots, this whole situation reveals something way bigger about the Trump White House, about Melania's actual role, and about how fragile their public image really is. First off, let's talk about Stephanie Winston Wolkoff, because understanding her is key to understanding why these leaks are so damaging. Wolkoff wasn't some low-level aide. She was a close personal friend of Melania's. They knew each other from New York's social scene. When Trump became president, Melania brought Wolkoff into the White House as a senior advisor. She helped organize the inauguration. She was supposed to be one of Melania's trusted inner circle. But then, something went wrong. Reports started coming out that Wolkoff's company was paid like $26 million for inauguration planning. The number got scrutinized. Questions were raised about where that money went. And eventually, Wolkoff left the White House. But here's the thing. She didn't just quietly disappear. She kept those recordings. She held on to private conversations she'd had with Melania, and when she finally decided to write her tell-all book, she used those tapes as proof that everything she was saying was real. Now, Melania's team obviously tried to do damage control. Her chief of staff put out a statement saying this was, and I quote, an obvious attempt to gain attention. The timing of this raises questions. And yeah, sure, the timing was suspicious. The tapes were released right in the middle of election season. Maximum impact, maximum headlines. But here's what Melania's team couldn't really argue with. The tapes were real. Those were Melania's actual words, her actual voice, her actual frustrations. So what exactly did these recordings reveal? Well, let's break it down piece by piece, because each part tells you something different about what was really happening inside the White House. First, there's the whole Christmas decoration rant. And look, on the surface, this might seem like no big deal, right? Like who cares if the First Lady is tired of decorating? But think about the optics here. The Trump administration was constantly accused of being disconnected from average Americans, of being wealthy elites who didn't understand normal people's problems. And then you get Melania on tape complaining about having to make the White House look nice for the holidays, which is literally something millions of American families do every year on their own time with their own money. And she's acting like it's this unbearable burden. It just confirms what critics always said, that the Trumps were out of touch, that they didn't really care about the symbolic, traditional parts of leadership, that it was all about power and image, not about actually serving the American people with grace and dignity. But honestly, the Christmas stuff is the least damaging part of these recordings, because then we get into the immigration comments. And this is where things get really, really problematic. So during the summer of 2018, the Trump administration implemented this zero tolerance policy at the border. What that meant in practice was that families crossing the border illegally were being separated. Kids were taken from their parents and put in detention facilities. In the images that came out, kids in cages, crying children, families torn apart, it was horrific. It became this massive national controversy. People on both sides of the political aisle were upset about it, and the public kept asking, where is Melania? She's the First Lady. She's a mother herself. Surely she must have some compassion for these children. Surely she must be pushing her husband to change this policy. But Melania stayed mostly silent. She made one trip to the border wearing that infamous jacket that said, I really don't care. do you? On the back. And that just made things worse. Well, now we know what she was really thinking, because on these leaked tapes, Melania talks about the family separation policy, and her main concern isn't the children. It's not the families being destroyed. It's not the families being destroyed. It's not the humanitarian crisis. No, her main concern is that people are criticizing her. She's upset that people think she's complicit. She's frustrated that people expect her to speak out. She says on the tape, they say I'm complicit. I'm the same like him. I support him. I don't say enough. I don't do enough where I am. So she knows people are mad at her, but instead of using her platform to advocate for change, instead of privately pushing Trump to reverse the policy, she's just annoyed that people are criticizing her for not doing anything. And let's be real here. The First Lady has enormous influence. She has access to the president that literally no one else has. If she had wanted to make family separation a priority, if she had wanted to push Trump to change course, she could have, but she didn't. And these tapes suggest that her silence wasn't because she was quietly working behind the scenes, it was because she just didn't want to deal with it. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. When these tapes came out, Trump reportedly had a complete emotional breakdown. And that's kind of surprising, right? Because this is a guy who's weathered every scandal imaginable. The Access Hollywood tape, where he talked about grabbing women, multiple affairs, impeachment, January 6th, legal investigations, business scandals, you name it, he survived it. But his wife's private frustrations becoming public, that's what gets to him. And I think that tells you something important about Trump's psyche. He can handle attacks on his character. He can handle people questioning his business practices or his policies. But when it comes to his family, when it comes to Melania specifically, that's where he's actually vulnerable. Because here's the thing. Melania has always been Trump's proof that he's not really that bad. Whenever people would criticize him, his supporters would point to Melania and say, look, this beautiful, intelligent woman chose to marry him. She stands by him. She believes in him. So he can't be as terrible as the media says. Melania was his shield, his evidence that deep down, he must be a decent person. But these tapes shattered that narrative, because suddenly everyone could hear that Melania wasn't this loyal, devoted partner who believed in everything Trump was doing. She was frustrated. She was tired. She felt trapped in a role she never really wanted. And she didn't seem to care about the same things Trump's base cared about. And for Trump, that's devastating. Because if even his own wife doesn't fully support him, doesn't fully believe in what he's doing, then what does that say about his presidency? What does that say about his leadership? The media, of course, went absolutely crazy with this story. CNN played the tapes over and over. Every news network covered it. Social media exploded with reactions. Conservatives tried to defend Melania, saying she was just venting in private like anyone would. Liberals used the tapes as evidence that the entire Trump family was morally bankrupt. And moderates were just shocked. Shocked that a first lady would talk this way. Shocked that her friend would betray her like this. Shocked at how dysfunctional things clearly were inside the White House. And here's the thing that makes this scandal different from all the others. Usually when Trump faces controversy, his base rallies around him. They dismiss it as fake news or media bias. But with Melania's tapes, that's harder to do, because these aren't allegations from anonymous sources. These aren't interpretations or spin. It's literally Melania's own voice saying things that make her look bad. So what does this all mean? Why does this scandal matter so much? Well, it matters because it reveals the truth behind the carefully constructed image the Trumps have always presented. It shows that behind closed doors, things aren't nearly as perfect or unified as they want you to believe. And it proves that even the people closest to Trump, even his own wife, have serious doubts and frustrations about what he's doing. This is the kind of scandal that sticks, because it's personal, it's emotional, and it's undeniable. Okay, so let's break this whole thing down into simple points so you can really understand what just happened here and why it's such a massive deal for the Trumps. Point number one, these leaked recordings completely destroyed the image of Melania as the supportive, devoted First Lady. For years, Trump supporters have held up Melania as this example of grace and loyalty. They've compared her to other First Ladies and said she's classier, more reserved, more dignified. But these tapes show that behind closed doors, she's cursing about Christmas decorations and complaining about having to fulfill her duties. That's not the image of someone who's proud to serve. That's the image of someone who feels trapped and resentful. And look, I actually have some sympathy for Melania here. She never ran for office. She never asked to be thrust into this spotlight. She married a wealthy businessman, and then suddenly that businessman became president, and her entire life changed. I get that. I understand that being First Lady is exhausting and comes with enormous pressure. But here's the thing. Part of being a public figure at that level is maintaining composure. It's understanding that your words matter, and it's accepting the responsibilities that come with the position. Melania clearly didn't want to accept those responsibilities, and now everyone knows it. Her frustration is on tape for the whole world to hear, and that fundamentally changes how people see her. She's no longer the mysterious, elegant First Lady. She's someone who's fed up and doesn't really care about hiding it anymore. Point number 2. The betrayal by Stephanie Winston Wolkoff is absolutely brutal and reveals how toxic the Trump inner circle really is. Think about what happened here. Wolkoff was Melania's friend. She was brought into the White House specifically because of that friendship. And then when things went south, when money questions came up, when the relationship soured, Wolkoff didn't just walk away quietly. She recorded private conversations. She wrote a tell-all book. She released damaging audio to the press. That's not normal. That's not how functional administrations work. In most White Houses, even when staffers leave, even when there are disagreements, there's still a basic level of loyalty and discretion. People don't secretly record the First Lady and then leak those recordings during an election year. The fact that Wolkoff felt justified in doing this, the fact that she thought this was an acceptable way to handle their falling out, that tells you something about the culture inside Trump's orbit. It's cutthroat. It's transactional. Everyone's looking out for themselves. And the moment things go wrong, the moment someone feels slighted or pushed out, they're willing to burn everything down on their way out the door. That's not loyalty. That's not a team. That's a powder keg waiting to explode. Point number 3. The comments about immigrant children separated from their families are morally indefensible. And this is where Melania really loses any benefit of the doubt. Because yeah, maybe you can excuse her frustration about Christmas decorations. Maybe you can understand her feeling overwhelmed by the expectations placed on First Ladies. But when it comes to children being ripped away from their parents at the border, there's no excuse for her response. On those tapes, Melania's focus isn't on the suffering of those families. It's on herself. It's on how unfair it is that she's being criticized. It's on how people expect too much from her. And that lack of empathy, that lack of basic human compassion, is really disturbing. These weren't abstract political debates. These were real children experiencing real trauma. And the First Lady's reaction was essentially, "Why is everyone blaming me for this?" That tells you everything you need to know about where her priorities were. And it confirms what a lot of people suspected all along, that the Trumps didn't really care about the human cost of their policies. They cared about the political fallout. They cared about their image. But the actual people affected, that was secondary. Point number 4. Trump's emotional collapse over these leaks shows his biggest weakness. And this is actually really important to understand. Trump has survived scandal after scandal throughout his entire career. He's faced allegations of sexual misconduct, business fraud, tax evasion, inciting violence, you name it. And every single time, he's brushed it off. He's attacked his accusers. He's called it fake news. He's moved on. But when Melania's tapes leaked, he couldn't do that. Because this wasn't an attack from an enemy. This was his own wife's voice, revealing things that made him look bad. And he reportedly fell apart. Sources said he was devastated. He was angry. He felt betrayed. And that vulnerability, that's actually his greatest weakness. Because it shows that for all his bluster and confidence, Trump's sense of self is deeply tied to Melania's support. He needs her standing beside him. He needs her playing the role of the devoted wife. Without that, his whole image crumbles. And these tapes threaten to take that away from him. So what does all this mean going forward? Well, a few things. First, it means that anytime Trump tries to present himself and his family as strong and united, people are going to remember these tapes. They're going to remember Melania cursing about Christmas. They're going to remember her lack of empathy for separated children. They're going to remember that she admitted feeling complicit in controversial policies. Second, it means that the Trump brand of loyalty and family values takes a huge hit. Because if even Melania, Trump's own wife, is privately frustrated and resentful, then what does that say about everyone else in his orbit? How many other people are just going through the motions, playing their roles, but secretly thinking something completely different? And third, it means that this kind of betrayal, this kind of leaked recording scandal could happen again. Because if Wolkoff was recording conversations, who else was? How many other former friends, former advisors, former staffers have damaging information that they're just waiting for the right moment to release? The Trumps have made a lot of enemies over the years. They've burned a lot of bridges. And every person they've pushed out, every relationship they've destroyed is a potential threat. Because those people have inside knowledge. They have private conversations. They have receipts. And when they decide they've had enough, when they decide they want revenge or money or attention, they can blow everything up just like Wolkoff did. The scandal isn't just about some leaked recordings. It's about trust. It's about loyalty. It's about the image versus the reality. And it proves that behind the scenes, things in Trump's world are way messier than anyone wants to admit. So yeah, secret recordings leaked, Melania's frustrations went public, Trump's emotional armor cracked, and the whole country got to see that the first family isn't nearly as perfect as they pretend to be. This is the kind of story that doesn't fade away. This is the kind of scandal that lingers. And honestly, something tells me this isn't the last time we're going to see a betrayal like this from inside Trump's inner circle.